Hand cycling is an incredible sport where athletes race these crazy looking machines. So I'm going to tell you all the details of this thing, weigh it, and do that all important freehub sound check. And to make sure I get all the details right, I've got para athlete Luke Jones here to help me out. So Luke, this is your racing hand cycle. It looks absolutely incredible. And we've just actually had a race outside, haven't we, where you absolutely destroyed us. So yeah, take us through this incredible machine. And where should we start? The main frame of it?
Yeah, so if we start from the back, you've got two main parts of the hand bike. You've got the front fork, and then you've got the rear frame. So here we have the draft bar, which you've got to use in all road races. You've got the 20-inch rear wheels are the most common. Some people go for 650s, and I have seen 700s, but 20-inch wheels are pretty much what 95% of the guys use. You've got the backrest here, fully carbon. You've got a cushion, which you can take off and wash.
Keep you comfy.
Yeah, exactly. And then the further forward we get, you've got more standard bike-like components, like you have the...
So we've got the chain rings, look similar, or exactly the same as what we'd have on your traditional bike?
Yeah, pretty much the same. The cranks are similar. I mean, crank length, you go from 150 to 170. So I think standard bikes are about 170, I think.
Yeah, so a little bit shorter. But the most striking thing about the cranks here that's different is that on a bike, you've got the crank arms opposed to each other, whereas here, they're on the same position, aren't they? So presumably, is that to help with the steering?
Yeah, I think mainly for me anyway, I get asked this question a lot, and I don't really know the exact answer, but control of the bike is where I would say. For instance, if you had one up, one down, you'd always be hitting your thigh bones when you're steering. But back to the bike setup, I've got a 50-34 chain ring, and as we move forward, we've got two brake calipers, which you've got to have as standard in any race. You've got the handbrake, and then you've got the pedal brake then, which is implemented in the new rules. You've got the electric shifter here as well.
So this is set up with electronic shifting. You've got Shimano Di2 on here, is that right?
Yeah, I've got Shimano Di2. Most people have switched over to ETAP now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the next move for me. And as we move forward, I mean, it's 650 front wheel, and then cassette-wise, race cassette for me is 1132. This is 1140 because I've just returned from Mallorca training camp, so I needed that for the climbs. And then the further forward you've got the foot plates, what they call foot plates.
Yeah. So these have got Velcro straps here to help hold your feet securely in place.
Exactly.
And they're adjustable as well, depending on the length and the position where you sit on this.
Yep.
And this is 650B front wheel. Not using the 700C, like just sort of road bike size wheel, slightly smaller. Yeah,
slightly smaller. So there are some people who use 700s. I'm not really sure why 650 seem to be the most common choice.
So the most striking thing at the front is the fact that we've got a similar setup to a road bike gears, but everything is inverted and flipped up the other way. Presumably because we've got what would normally be in the rear position on a bike is now in front of you. So to keep everything running in the same orientation, everything's just flipped upside down.
Yeah, pretty much exactly that. I mean, for instance, the derailleur there is what they call the rear derailleur.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a rear derailleur for this bike. And then you've got the chain ring there. But it's weird because if I go to any bike mechanic and like, oh, can you have a look at this? They always it's a bit difficult to get their head around because everything's almost like you mentioned upside down. So
the front derailleur, is that set up so you can control it? So you've got the shift buttons here with your brake lever. So this is a time trial bike shifter, and is that used to control the front? Well, what would be the rear derailleur, and then how's the front one controlled?
So I've got synchro shift, but of course you can do it manually. And then you have got a manual shifter here.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, so that can be used as well, but generally I have it in synchro shift and just tweak it depending on the course.
So this main front section of a hand cycle is effectively kind of like the forks, is that right?
Definitely. That's
so we're
what we
holding
call it.
the front wheel in place, we've got the steering pivot point here. So then we move up to top. You don't have a separate handlebar because you're using the cranks as well to steer and pedal, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty standard on most bikes. The only difference is the steering ability is not great if you've actually got legs. You tend to get different disabilities. You get guys who haven't got legs, and then of course they can kind of steer a lot better.
Yeah.
But yeah, the steering element is pretty much standard across all hand bikes.
And then I've just noticed there, as you were moving it, this is self-centering. So underneath here, we've got a small rubber bung, which is pulling the wheel back into its central position.
Yeah, exactly. That can be slightly adjusted depending on where you're riding. So if you're riding in the UK, you tend to have it leaning a little bit towards the camber of UK roads.
Yeah.
When you go abroad, then you tend to ride the other side, so you have it leaning the other way, if that makes sense.
Now, we had a race earlier on, and something that I found particularly interesting was some of the power numbers that we got from our race. So here you've got an SRM power meter built into that, and then tucked at the back, you've got your little display, haven't you?
Yeah, it's just a standard SRM.
Yeah.
Get it direct from them. Apparently SRM have done a little bit of work on power meters specific for hand bikes, because obviously we're riding at a much lower power, well, most of the time.
Yeah.
So these tend to be accurate from about 30 watts upwards,
okay.
Whereas a lot of others are a lot more accurate from maybe 110, 120, if that makes sense.
And then sticking around the sort of chainset area, we've got both this guard, which is made from carbon fibre. We've got the big holes drilled out of it to help reduce the weight of it. And also we've got a mirror. So is this guard there for a safety reason? I guess it's a regulation, is it, Sam?
Yeah, the guard is regulation. The mirror in a road race, I think you can remove this for a time trial, but this guard is actually a bit oversized for this bike. I could definitely get a much neater version of that, which is available.
Okay, so I'm just looking here on the forks. They seem to be adjustable. So we've got an aluminium section here with a fixing which you can presumably move in and out. So how does that adjust the control and stability of it?
Yeah, so the fork length is what it is. You can't change the fork length, but you can change the fork height up or down, which is pretty good, because when I bought this bike, I was bigger than what I am now. So if you look on the clamp, you'll see that I've moved it down one.
Yeah.
And you can actually see that I've been using two lower as well.
Yeah,
because I've been messing a little bit with crank length. So I've been trying 160 cranks for a time trial, and then switching back to 170s for a road race. And I find that works quite well.
Okay, so we've got a 25mm width tyre on the front, similar to what we would find on lots of road bikes. People might be familiar with this. And then on the rear, we've again got a slick tyre, again a road sort of style of tyre. And are these set up tubeless within a tube? How have you got this one?
These are clinchers. They've got tubes in them.
Yeah.
Race setup on the minute, I'm using tubs. However, I'm looking to switch over to tubeless.
Yeah, okay. And so would you use a different set of wheels for racing on?
Yeah, so these are my training wheels. I pretty much use these all of the time.
Yeah.
And then I have a set of rear discs, rear deep rims in 20-inch, and then a front deep rim in 650.
So I guess a lot of the principles that you're looking at are in terms of weight and aerodynamics. Are the concepts are similar to what you would have with a bike. So areas that I would look to optimise to try and make my bike faster is the similar sort of things what you're looking at.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the general rule is, as you progress through the ranks, you tend to find your backrest gets lower and you concentrate more on the aero position. But of course, as you would on a standard bike, the more aero you get, you do lose a little bit of power in terms of peak power and things like that.
Just talking about aerodynamics, we've got lots of sort of different components going on at the front, but what I have noticed is at the rear, we've got a really sort of aerodynamic tapered, it's that teardrop shape, haven't we, at the rear here, where the rear axle is, presumably to help reduce the turbulence and the airflow coming off the bike and try and make you go as fast as possible, I guess. So is aerodynamics an area that you're looking at working on at the moment?
Yeah, so this is the carbon bike 2018 version. There is a newer version and it's changed so much. The front fork, rear frame has changed, yeah, and it's a lot more aero. So it's something I need to look at investing in.
So in terms of the kit that you're riding in, as well as obviously the bike you're looking to optimize, what kind of equipment do you use when you're racing? Do you use an aerodynamic helmet, aerodynamic clothing?
Yeah, so I use a laser helmet, TT helmet. Tend to race in a road race one for comfort, in a road race, time trial helmet for a time trial. Skin suit, pretty new to me, to be honest, but I have started using them. So it's something that should help towards improving aerodynamics.
Okay, so I've had this bike on the GCN Scales of Truth, and I know that it weighs in at 12.45 kilograms, which, considering the fact that you've got 3 wheels, lots of other equipment going on, and just the size of this machine, I'm going to say that's pretty impressive, and the fact that it's all made out of carbon fibre. So with this being your current race bike, have you got any plans or little tweaks or modifications you're going to do to try and improve aerodynamics and the efficiency of your setup?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can. It's pretty obvious there. Some of the cables are all over the place. So I'm going to look at tidying them up. Possibly get some aero brake calipers. Maybe look at doing some internal brake cabling, and definitely look at some different tyre selection. Okay,
so all round, lots of different areas of improvement. So hopefully in the upcoming races, that will give a good sort of performance advantage for you. Now, in terms of a lot of the training you do, obviously a lot of what you do is outside, riding out in the open elements. But when the weather turns pretty nasty, what do you do? Because I mean, we've been in the rain earlier, and it's not particularly pleasant, is it?
Yeah, so even when the weather is good, to be honest, I tend to find training indoors, especially if I've got an interval session that I need to stick to a certain structure. I've got a Wahoo setup on a frame built by Draft Wheelchairs. And that's a great help.
So that's sort of a modified setup allowing you to remove the front wheel and use that sort of direct drive trainer with its electronic control resistance, and I guess you can use like virtual training platforms and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. There's a few training platforms that I've tried. I don't tend to stick to one. I just go with the flow, whichever one I fancy doing. So.
Oh, that's really interesting. I found it really interesting to have a good look at this. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a big thumbs up. And remember, if you want to see myself, Hank and Manon racing Luke on these incredible machines, well, head over to GCN and check that out, because it's well worth a watch. And why don't you let me know what you think of this incredible contraption in the comments section down below. Right, Luke, thanks very much for your time. It's really helpful. See you later.